I'm Monty. A quick intro to the tool. I promised to describe how we can generate fairer linked table representations of data that in the past we've engaged just as a CSV. So we have some language here describing the three examples I'll be going through. People are of course free to put links to their own RDF data sources. I picked three examples, one from CDC, another one from the Department of Health of the State of New York, and a third one to highlight the up-to-the-minute ability to engage data sources from the Police Department of Dallas, Texas. So let's start with the first one. So this is the someone we use in the mortality tracker. So when I click on the link, what you see is that the link to the data source is concatenated to the link to the application. So you have application, question mark, data source. You can also assemble this concatenated URL directly from this box here. You see this link is the same as this link. So the table we are going to explore next is the same table you would get from the CSV format. And notice again, we are getting data from the source. We are not uploading data. Data stays where it needs to be. And only those who can access it will be able to assemble these tables. In this case, it's public data, so anyone will be able to do so. So here we have numbers and we have column names, but we lost the context and we lost the reusability, the reliable reusability in the future. So if we use the exact same link, but with RDF as the format, a lot more data will come through. And if you want to compare the two, you just have to move your mouse here. This is the traditional representation, comma separated value, and this is how it looks like in RDF. As you see, RDF is not as easy to read as CSV, but that's because the context is wrapping around the data itself. It's not an obstacle in itself to generate the table, as you can see here. So the full table with information is here. So as I move my mouse around, you see things are changing. For example, if I look at this number, 70,637, you see below on the black box, you see what this is. It tells you what is the, let's move here so we can compare it more easily. So for instance, it says that this is row NTUIM, etc. And this is the same row that you would get, for example, by clicking here. See, again, straight from the source. So that in these new linkable formats, they allow you to retrieve only what you need without loss of context. Okay, so let's go through the rows. You see the rows changing here, all the way to the detail. When was the data last updated? An issue with COVID, as you remember. So here we go. You see last updated here at the end. And you also see on the left-hand side the prefix specifying the namespaces. So when you see something represented, for instance, like SOCRATA colon, SOCRATA refers to concatenations of this URL where the source information is. And the same thing for the row numbers, element identifiers, and so on. So let's spend a little time just moving around. So here you have the rows. Here you have the actual values, now in RDF format, so you can see how RDF addresses the issue of context. So you see here on the top, you see the row identifier. The row identifier will include, of course, the resource identifier, but you still have it repeated here. See, it's the third line. You have the resource identifier. And indeed, if we go there, so if you go to this link here, this link here, you get a page assembled for you that has the same information we retrieve programmatically from the RDF URL. So this is what you'd get from CDC, and it's the same information you get here. So this was retrieved programmatically from the same source. Provisional counts by week, provisional counts by week. There it is. The title, weekly provisional counts of deaths by state. Same title, weekly provisional deaths by state. You can always click on it and go straight to the JSON data that includes this information. See here. All right, so as you use the tool, it will become clear how it works. We have the same for rows, columns, and individual values. First, you have an example here where the parameter malignant underscore neoplasms underscore etc. is correctly understood as being a parameter with this name and with this description. All right, so you'll find more things as you go along. Let's just have a look at the other example. So here we have weekly data on mortality. Here we have yearly data and I look for something that is rare, breast cancer among women under 30 in Manhattan in 2017. And again, notice how the information was automatically assembled. We could have produced this in CSV, and that's it, same information. But of course we would lose context, and we lose the ability to link and port individual values in the table. So you'll be able to see here, again, we have the rows, row information, there it is. Sometimes the data is missing. This is something that I hope this tool will illustrate convincingly, is that the use of linked data formats is not a checklist, is a continuum that people populate as they go. And for instance, for this specific data, they didn't populate it, whereas for the previous one, you saw they did. And so people, as things go along, can improve the fairness of their data as we go. And we have the new namespaces here, now pointing not to CDC, but to the New York State the Department of Health. All right, the third example is one I picked up to highlight this idea of up-to-the-minute data interoperability. So it's not just about data that we retrieve and we use, but data that is changing constantly, even faster than we saw with weekly numbers for COVID. So in this case, it's up to the minute. So let's go to the police department of the city of Dallas in Texas and find out this is early morning. We don't expect a lot of activity, accidents, some crime going on. So these are high priority. And so you can find out what each of them means by going over the table. Again, like in the previous examples, there it is. So DallasOpenData.com resource. So this is data that is completely public. You know, we can go here and retrieve the exact same information that you see retrieved from the API, but retrieved from the police open data dashboard. Sometimes the data will be missing. That's the same example as before. And other times it will be available, as we saw for CDC. In general, CDC is probably among the most thorough sources of this type of data. So let's go to CDC. Again, notice here, this is the link to the source. It's in RDF. We could get it in CSV. And here you have the full information about what things mean. And same thing here. Whereas for the third example, the police department in Dallas, you see that you actually have plenty of information about what the columns mean, so the field values mean, there it is. And actually they are written towards a user, as you see, from 1 to 4, specifying the description of the value range. But when it comes to the raw identifiers, you have the unique identifiers, so there's no loss of consistency, but this is, if you want, the horizon of linkability. We'd have to go to the individual data sources here in RDF format to find exactly what are the addresses of the resource and the row. All right, so I'll let you have a look at this. Take your time. There's a lot I tried to pack in the same tool. Let me know if you want me to make any changes. So now we're going through 3 examples, but of course you could use your own data sources to assemble your own tables. This will only work from data sources that are at what we are now describing as the fair stage. So they've matured and they've been wrapped in enough metadata that we have this ability to port individual components. Right, let's have a look. Let's try, for instance, cancer, smoking, and there's something here. Let's get the API. So we go back here. It's usually wise to put limits, but onto it, we'll see what happens. We may be retrieving a lot of data. Actually, I'm going to restrict it to 1,000 entries, so we don't have to wait. So now when I click tabulate, this link is going to be concatenated here to the URL of the application, and this table will be produced. So whatever comes out of this, you could share by email or text message with someone else, and the same table with the same information will be assembled. Here we go. So notice here, the link is going to change. This information, of course, will change as well, and everything else will be assembled from there. So it's now going through. There it is. 1,000 rows were retrieved. Could, of course, look at it at CSV data. The difference is just the format. So this would be, if you want, the decontextualized representation, and this would be the contextualized representation with RDF. And we have a few more formats like JSON in between. All right, so hopefully this demonstrates that this sort of approach is generic in nature, can be pointed to any source that subscribes to this fairer linking ability of the new formats like resource description representation. All right, stop here. Bye now.